you see the title, I want to talk about shame. Shame is something that lots of religions or lots of people in religion have. And it's pretty much a very common thing, I believe. I mean, at least for the conversations that I've had from people and the conversations I've had not just with those people, but about other people, like their friends. I just want to talk about shame because that's what we're trying to alleviate, right? So as right, high noon, we're trying to lift shame, lift people out of their shadows of shame, shadows of shame, and into the light, into high noon. So if we're going to do that, we need to talk about shame. Shame, what a shame that people feel so isolated and so alone. Okay, I need to figure out this mic, dude. Hold on. It's bothering me because I'm not like, if I mute this mic, yeah, it's still, I don't sound, do I sound crisp? Do I sound good? I want to sound the best I can for you guys. And right now, it's distracting me because I want the best. I'm a perfectionist. Maybe this is my shame. I don't think I configured it right, so I'm just gonna, whatever. Okay, give up on that and just, okay. I have no mic, just nowhere to be. Okay. So anyway, shame. One thing. So I had a conversation with my sister a few months ago, more than a few months ago. It was before April blessing. So what we talked about was, we talked about sex. We talked about, you know, the vision, like growing up. There's a lot, you know, growing up, we're taught a lot about, you know, purity 1.0, right? So if you haven't joined a live stream before, we talked about how purity is very much the idea, kind of like the old, like kind of unupdated version of purity is just don't do this, don't have sex, don't kiss, don't date. My parents taught me don't date, right? What are the four fallen natures? Don't do those, okay? We learned about the fall of human beings, and we learned, right? It's not, you know, something. It was a sexual sin, and so we have to stay away from anything sexual. And then, you know, our parents completely avoided at least my parents. I don't, maybe yours too. Most parents avoided the topic about porn. I remember my first conversation I had with my dad about the birds and the bees. It was, we went fishing and then he talked to me and it was just like the most awkward. I don't even remember what we talked about. I just remember we were sitting in the booth and he was like, it wasn't even clear about, I don't even remember that conversation. So I just remember feeling really weird because my dad was also feeling really weird about it. And there was no time for questions or, you know, like, I guess there's no continuation of that conversation either. It was just a one and done kind of thing. And yeah, I think that's the experience for most people. And it's not just like within the church, but like within, you know, most religions. I think the idea and the concept of sex is very kind of like, all right, that's it, there we go, you know, like, okay, that's the information, I'm done, like, you know, that's the way it's given, right? And so there's a lot of like ambiguity and a lot of kind of uncomfortable feelings and shame around sex. And so by the conversation that I had with my sister, before my own blessing, before my own marriage, I was, you know, asking her a bunch of things and like just what worked for her, what struggles she went through. For context, she's 10 years older than, no, my sister is actually 12 years older than me. So anyway, she's kind of ahead of the game and I'm really close to her and I can talk to her about these things. And it's just like, for one thing, growing up in the movement in the church, yeah, like chapter 2, right? It's just like, I have chapter 2 problems, you know, like saying it like that, framing it like that is just, first of all, it reveals a lot of like, you know, ambiguity, a lot of shame around that, right? Now, we can't say like, oh, I'm struggling with porn, or yeah, I'm like, you know, I've been masturbating and it's not something I just don't want to do, right? Like we don't say that. We just say chapter 2 problems. So I think for one thing, it's and actually I just realizing it now. Recently it's been high noon problems and I don't like that. I think we need to change that kind of culture, but because it reveals something deeper, which is a shame. So what I was talking about with my sister was how growing up in this church, there's a lot of, right, that feeling and ambiguity and uncomfort with uncomfortable feelings with this whole sex thing, right? Just stay away from the other opposite gender. Stay away, if you catch a crush, if you catch feelings, you better just stay away. I think that was a lot of the motivation for how I interacted with girls in high school too. Like I wanted attention from girls. I couldn't admit that. I couldn't tell that to my parents. I couldn't fix that. I was just something that I was hiding from. And then anytime I felt like I liked a girl, and then I could kind of maybe spend time with her, and then as soon as there was like something where it was mutual, I would like cut her off and be like, yeah, no, okay. So that conversation that I had with my sister definitely revealed that it's not just me, and it's not just her, it's a lot of people, right? Growing up with the idea that sex is shameful, that sex is something that's really something it's even hard to talk about. Okay, if we have any questions, we go to the internet. Like, what? Is that really the best place we should learn about loving somebody, right? Intimately, it doesn't, it's not a place where we can learn about sex that's aligned with our views and actually aligned with the vision that we have. But this is how we did it, right? So inside the church, there's a lot of sex, and then we have a lot of shame around sex, and so there's a lot of problems because we can't communicate those issues. And so what happens is that we grow up with those beliefs. It's like a constant thing, right? Like let's see, for me growing up, it was just sex was hard to talk about. It was hard to open up to anybody about my problems. If I had a issue with porn or with masturbation, which I did, especially high school and a little bit after, it was not like something I could easily talk about. And it was something that if I fell back into, and I fell deep back into it, I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't talk about how much I was struggling, because I wanted to be a good religious boy. I wanted to be a good man of God, or a good boy of God. Anyway. So, right, that like concept kind of, it's really stuck with me, right? The belief, the deep belief, and that's not just me. That's a lot of different people. That might be you, okay? And so see, I didn't realize until recently during this conversation that kind of mindset actually hinders us so much from believing in true and real love. Because what happens when we grow up our whole life not, trying to avoid the opposite sex, avoiding the topic about sex to talk about with the people we should respect the most, right? Our parents or mentors or teachers, right? We don't talk about it. It's shameful, and it's a problem that I have a sex problem, and that's all you have. Okay? If you grow up with that, and then suddenly you're married, and it's like, okay, there you go, you're blessed. Go for it. Those old beliefs aren't just gonna melt away, be like completely, put a sticker over it. We might be putting a sticker over it, but we're not solving a problem, actually. Yeah. So imagine going into a relationship that you've waited your whole life for, right? So happy. Oh, I'm finally blessed. I'm finally, like now I can morally have sex with my wife. I can morally be with my wife, and we can touch and have fun and do all these things that I've wanted to do for so long in my life. Imagine, right? Like going from that belief of like sex is so shameful and then just being married. Would that change automatically, completely? Like, I don't think so. And actually, many people, myself included, actually have that problem. Exactly. Suddenly they're blessed. And then they're so excited. And then like when the time comes to, for the first night, right? This long awaited first night. And then all like the shame around sex, all the guilt around sex. It becomes actually a really scary thing, and it becomes something that's hard to talk about. No, it's been hard to talk about your whole life, and so now it's suddenly easier. No, it's not like that. And so that's why this trend of shame and of guilt actually is really kind of a fine line that we're not really doing so good in in handling, because we're raising up young generation of people teaching about the fall, teaching how sex was an evil act that happened, and the result of that was just the fallen human world, and then like, yeah, there's truth to that, and that is important to know. But I think, like, me growing up, I wasn't really educated on the beauty of sex, what God's original intention of sex and the blessing was. And so, yeah, there is more for me to overcome, to be able to communicate with my wife, or to be able to communicate with my elder brothers, right? For advice, or just sharing openly about shadows so I can lift them. So that is actually what's so important to understand. Okay, so when I was talking to my sister about this, and how, like, yeah, when we were being grown up, and she's older than me, right? So she really understood. She kind of really experienced like that. Like, it was a little bit better during my time, definitely, but like, a little bit earlier, with the earlier, older second gen, it's just like, it's so intense, right? It's so intense to the point where it's it's scary, and it's not something you desire. It's like something you're scared of. Sex, right? You're scared of sex. You're scared of it, because and then imagine just raising up someone in that environment, in that mindset, for their whole life, and then suddenly it's like, oh, now you're blessed. Well, like, nothing can change immediately like that. They've been raised their whole life. You've been raised their whole life. And not you, maybe you, but most likely you have been raised your whole life with that belief. Not really believing that actually sex is an amazing and beautiful gift from God. To experience complete intimacy with just one person, how beautiful that can be, and how much, like, love grows. Like, this is like stuff I just learned recently, relatively, right, within the past couple of years, out of me being 25 years old, right? And so this is like a huge problem, because people are getting blessed, and then there's actually so much challenge around a sexual relationship. It's like, well, actually, it makes a lot of sense. And so recently, yeah, the church and High Noon, right? High Noon is providing such wonderful education through Radiant and through its programs, but I think, right, like, this is the time now to, like, lift the shame, especially with the young people in the young generation, right? I think it's like, kind of fix this now, okay, or even prevent it completely. Now, a lot of the couples who are involved with High Noon, they're educating their kids, not the fear of sex, but really, like, understanding how powerful it is, how the misuse of it can be so dangerous, but something that you can invest into and actually direct into something beautiful. So let's focus on that, okay?